Our next speaker needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. And this is a story I don't think that I've ever told before, but it's true. What got me started blogging at RedState and leads me to where I am today was back in late 2004, early 2005. I read a book called If It's Not Close, They Can't Cheat, that said, it talked about the power of the blogs and the change that they made in the election and the Dan Rather story with the documents and so on and so forth. And one of the blogs that it mentioned there was RedState, so you can go sign up for your own diary anytime you want. I read that. I went the next day, signed up at RedState for a diary. Here I am today. That's the process. And the guy I'm about to welcome to the stage wrote the book that kind of started that whole ball rolling. He is one of the most popular talk radio hosts in the nation. He is one of the fathers of modern blogging. He has worked in numerous Republican administrations in a variety of capacities. He is, as I mentioned, a published author many, many times over, and we are delighted to have him here at this gathering to speak to all of you. He is going to talk about the experience that he had being part of the debate team for CNN for the primary debates this year, and then he's going to welcome on a panel as well. But let's stand and give a nice round of applause to Hugh Hewitt, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Red Staters. Thank you. I, of course, I'm going to depart from what I was supposed to talk about because I'm going to get to that. But I've learned in the course of doing media that always answer the question you want to answer, not the question that you were asked. And, and what I want to answer is, you just had Larry O'Connor up here, and he was supposed to talk about reform, but of course the panel went wildly off course and was interesting, but Larry did a terrible job of moderating. And O'Connor is one of the people I consider my closest friends in the business, and I really do believe in the power of RedState because I believe that you really only influence between 12 and 20 people, and Larry and I influence each other back and forth in the way that we do broadcast and redemptive broadcasting, the way that RedState integrates impact also with advocacy. And I really want to get to our panel so we can talk about advocacy more than anything else, but I wanted to cover three things with you. I want to persuade you of three things. There are three things that need to happen going forward, whoever wins. And I am voting for Donald Trump, and I'm happy to talk about it for everyone. I'm voting for him because of the United States Supreme Court, and for no other reason. I can spend all day long talking to you about that. I've been teaching con law for 20 years, and the cliff that we are close to with President Clinton appointing 1, 2, 3, 4 justices is so profound that RedState could be illegal in 5 years. And I say that not as an alarmist, but simply as someone who understands the reach and the power of the FCC and the flexibility of leftists empowered with judicial authority, that I really do want you to rethink if you are an opponent of Donald Trump. You don't have to like him, you don't have to like his trade policy, you don't have to like anything about him at all. You have to believe in his list of 11 and the fact he told me on Thursday that the Senate of the United States would be authorized to filibuster and block any appointee not of that list to the court. And so I take that to the bank. I believe in that, and I really hope that's my pitch for Trump among the never-Trumpers, who I'm sure there are some in the room. But going forward, no matter who wins, there are three reforms I want to see done. The first, and I asked Steve Deace, rhymes with mace because that's what he hits you with, about whether or not Iowa would give up their preferred poll position. And I don't want them to. But I want them paired with somebody. And I want New Hampshire paired with somebody. Specifically, I want Iowa to be paired with another caucus state that the Republicans either won very narrowly or lost very narrowly in the fall, so that we can find people who have reach outside of the Iowa Democrats. So they have to work 2 states, so that they have to develop capacity and reach, and they have to work harder. That might be Colorado, by the way. It's another caucus state where I believe if you pair a caucus state with a caucus state, you will add depth and breadth to our ability to select nominees if Mr. Trump doesn't win. And if it's 2024, that would be fine. And then I want to pair with New Hampshire for first in the nation primary, the state, which has a primary that is the one that we either won or lost by the narrowest margin. Because you have to flip states or defend states to win the Electoral College. And New Hampshire is a good first state primary. But it ought to be paired with something. After that, I like the calendar. Reince Priebus, in my view, has been a terrific chairman. He's been a remarkable chairman because he did 3 great reforms. He brought order out of chaos in the primary calendar 4 years ago. If you don't remember, it was a nightmare. We were campaigning at Christmas time in Des Moines. We were there 3 days before Christmas in Des Moines, trying to cover an election. And Reince and the RNC brought order out of chaos, and so I approve of that. I would just add a little more flexibility. And Part 1A, close the primaries. No more open primaries. And I do believe it's unconstitutional to require us to have an open primary. It's a I'm a Republican. As Mike Pence says, I'm a Christian, a conservative, Republican in that order. I'm actually a Christian, a Republican, and a conservative in that order. I'm a party man, and I'm with Disraeli in that respect. I'm probably to the right of most of you, but I believe parties are the agents of influence and reform, and that you have to build up parties, and the only way to actually make that succeed is to close primaries. So that's number one. Number two, before I come to the media, they moved the convention up. That was great. How many of you were in Cleveland? Now, I'm from northeastern Ohio, the land of great sports and dominant cultural ethos. We are the reigning NBA champions with the greatest comeback in the history of the NBA. The Cleveland Indians currently are in first place, and although the Browns had a very bad preseason game last night with the Packers, we have a plan, and we have Hugh Jackson, and we have 2 first-round draft choices, one of which belongs to the Eagles, so we're in great shape. I'm very serious about what I'm about to say. I think we ought to just permanently locate the convention in Cleveland. It was a terrific convention, logistically. Now, those of you who watched Philadelphia don't know, Philadelphia was a logistical nightmare. Tampa Bay, which I attended 4 years ago, logistical nightmare. Hurricanes are not a good thing for conventions. Minnesota, 4 years earlier, logistical nightmare. The New York convention in 2004 ran very well, but what are Republicans doing in Manhattan anyway? We don't want to go back there. And so there are really only 2 cities in which one ought to hold a Republican convention, Denver or Cleveland. And they might want to go back and forth, but those are both swing states. They're swing states, and if you get better at conventions, the more you practice them. So the idea of moving them around is crazy. So you might want to leave it at Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, like the British Open plays at a series of courses. But putting it permanently in Cleveland is something I'm going to advocate for. And I want you, as all social media people, to start thinking about the benefits of deciding early where you're going to do it and the advantages to actually organizing. It was a beautifully run convention. Whether you liked messages from the podium or not, logistically it was a smash, and it really made people like us in northeastern Ohio. And we have to win Ohio. No Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio. So Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, fine, but we don't need the drama. Next, move it even further forward. We did it in July. Reince wanted to do it in June. They couldn't do it because the Cavaliers won. We're probably going to win for another 3 years, but LeBron will age out eventually. When we come back 4 years from now, we ought to do our convention in June. There are a lot of reasons to do that. We were going to do it in June this year, but the Cavs took over the queue in order to win the greatest comeback ever in the history of the NBA. And moving it forward has enormous practical advantages in campaign finance and in setting up messaging. So among all the activists in this room, start thinking June 2020. Whether it's a re-elect Trump campaign or it's a new campaign, think June 2020. Now about the media, that which I've been tasked to talk about. I can do it in 4 minutes and bring up our panel. Fascinating process. I have nothing but praise for CNN. I did not work for CNN. I have never cut a check for CNN except for op-eds that I've written for them over the years. I've never worked for CNN television. I have nothing but praise for the professionalism of Jeff Zucker and his entire team. I was a wideout with Dana Bash. My quarterbacks were Jake Tapper twice and Wolf Blitzer twice. And that's how the debates ran. They called your number. You had the play, you had the ball, and then you were to advance the ball against the 17-odd Republicans. And I did this 4 times, and I learned so much about television. I've been doing television for a long time. I now work for NBC. I signed with NBC after this thing is over, so I'm now an NBC analyst. And I spend a lot of time at MSNBC, which I'm sure all of you are watching all the time. I'm here to ask you to start watching because they're making a concerted effort to introduce our point of view into MSNBC, and it's an interesting transplant operation. The body is trying to reject the organ, but they can't get rid of me. I'm stuck there, and I'm not leaving, and there are a bunch of us who are doing that. And so, but here's what I learned. We don't need the networks to run our debates. We don't. All right, so this was a transition year. Do you notice that the networks don't run the convention? The networks have pool feeds. The networks don't run the debates, which are coming up this fall. They have a pool feed. The moderators are selected by the candidate campaigns with some advice by the Presidential Commission, which ought to go out the door. We don't need the Presidential Commission anymore either. It's like having a dinosaur running the presidential debate cycle. Everyone is ancient of days. They've been doing the same thing. I mean, I love Jim Lehrer. I was a PBS guy for a long time. He's done 12 presidential debates. Really? Is there no one else in the United States that can do a presidential debate besides Jim Lehrer and Gwen Ifill? There are people that can, and we need to move beyond that. But looking ahead to the debates 4 years from now, why not? Who participated besides me? Mary Catherine Ham. Mary Catherine Ham did an extraordinary job as an ABC conservative questioner. Why not Ed Morrissey, hot air? Or why not Larry O'Connor? Because after all, balding people need representation too. Gotcha, Larry. Why not Eric Erickson or Leon Wolf? Why not Amanda Carpenter? Why not Katie Pavlik? Why not Britt Hume? Why not Stephen Hayes? Why not people that we read all the time ask all the questions? Because no matter how much input I had, and I had absolutely no editorial conflicts within the room. I was there as a partner with CNN, the Salem Broadcasting, Salem Media Group, which owns RedState, and all of which you are partnered with. They simply partnered with CNN. So I'm in the room, and they accepted me. And they said, okay, here's the only thing we want is good television. And so I would come up with some questions which they thought were really stupid, and they were really stupid because they wouldn't work in television. They were too complicated. But I held my ground on a couple of them that became somewhat famous, like nuclear triad. And they didn't want to use the word triad. I said, come on, everybody knows what a nuclear triad is. No, it turns out they didn't. But they did not, it added to the debates to have a conservative in the room. I informed media. But in the back of my mind, if conservatives want to nominate a conservative, if Republicans want to nominate a Republican, don't let mainstream media, which is overwhelmingly liberal. And I mean, you can take them out of Manhattan and Washington, D.C., but you cannot take Washington, D.C. and Manhattan out of network executives. They are nearly 95% going to pull the lever if they vote at all, and some of them don't, to maintain the illusion to themselves of fairness. I think Jake was exceptionally fair. I thought Wolf was exceptionally fair. I thought ABC ran a good debate. I thought that Fox ran great debates. There was only one bad debate, and John Harwood's a friend of mine, and John got off on the wrong foot. That debate, the CNBC debate, was kind of a train wreck. But they were very well. But I kept thinking to myself, why are we letting the media ask questions? They don't know what we want to know. I can pick from this room 4 people who would be better. You'd have to practice. You have to sit down and learn how to act. It's not a speech and debate tournament. You're asking a question to advance the goals of the Republican primary electorate, which is what should you know about what? And we don't need the networks. So I'm also urging, in addition to the fact that we move up the convention, that we leave it in Cleveland, that we change the primary calendar a little bit, that the next iteration in 4 years is let conservatives run the Republican Party debates 100%. The media will be upset. They will. And you say to them, you don't have to cover it. We're going to let all of the networks cover all of the debates, and you will all and they will carry them all, because the ratings were through the roof. 25 million people watched the first debate. 24.5 million people watched the second debate. That doesn't count the Salem Radio Network audience that added in. So these enormous audiences existed for these debates because Americans are a civic people. They have a deep engagement. There is no reason that conservatives and Republicans ought not to run conservative and Republican debates. So take that to the bank and remember that. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for letting Larry O'Connor run a debate, letting me run a debate, letting Mary Catherine Ham run a debate, letting Ed Morrissey run a debate. Let us run the whole thing. We know how to do it, and please join me in that advocacy. Now I want to transition to advocacy generally, because this panel may be the most important panel you'll hear. And I've got nothing to do with that. It's just who we brought here. We have 3 professionals, and I'd like to ask Morgan, Frederick, and Steve to come out now if they're already here and mic'd up. Are they ready? We've got to bring one more chair. They're not ready yet. They've got to run. Here they come. Come on up, gentlemen, and we need one more chair from the back.